I worked at a software company in Seattle for 5 years. I was the senior systems engineer, the only person who truly understood our entire back-end system. The company thrived because of the infrastructure I built from scratch, but recently, something shifted. A new boss arrived and everything changed. I started feeling like my 5 years of dedication meant nothing. I never imagined that my 2 weeks' notice would become the company's worst nightmare. Before I tell you how one resignation letter brought an entire department to its knees, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. If you have ever felt undervalued at work, hit that like button. And subscribe. Because what happened next taught me the most valuable lesson about knowing your worth. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I am Joshua, and back then, I was living what I thought was a pretty solid life. TechVantage Solutions was not some massive corporation, just a business-to-business software company with about 80 employees. Small enough that everyone knew each other, big enough to have real clients and steady paychecks. I worked in the engineering department, which had 12 people total, and my role was senior systems engineer. Basically, I built and maintained everything that kept the company running behind the scenes. The database architecture, the API integrations, all the back-end infrastructure that nobody sees but everyone depends on. 5 years earlier, I was their first hire for this position. The company was tiny then, maybe 20 people. They needed someone to build their technical foundation, and I took that challenge seriously. I spent nights and weekends designing systems, writing code, making sure everything scaled as we grew. There was no time for documentation back then. We were moving fast, solving problems as they came. Mr. Harrison, our CEO, trusted me completely. He would stop by my desk, ask how things were going, actually listen to my answers. The pay was decent, the work was interesting, and I had a life outside the office. I lived with my girlfriend Amy in a small apartment in Capitol Hill. We would grab dinner at our favorite Thai place on Fridays, hike in the Cascades on weekends. Life felt balanced. Then 6 months ago, everything started changing. Mr. Harrison decided the company needed to scale up, get more professional. He hired a vice president of engineering to oversee our department. The guy's name was Douglas Whitmore. 45 years old, MBA, from some prestigious school experience at several big tech companies. On paper, he looked perfect. In reality, he was about to become my worst nightmare. Douglas's first day, he called a meeting with the entire engineering team. We all gathered in the conference room, curious about this new leader. He walked in wearing an expensive suit which already felt out of place. We were a jeans and hoodies kind of office. He stood at the head of the table and launched into this speech about modernizing processes, accountability, and efficiency metrics. Lots of buzzwords. I felt slightly annoyed but figured maybe this was good for the company. Maybe we did need more structure. The first week, Douglas sent out an email requiring everyone to submit daily progress reports. Every single day we had to write what we accomplished, what we were working on, what blockers we faced. It felt excessive for a team of 12 people who sat 20 feet from each other, but I complied. I sent my reports every evening before leaving. Then Douglas started asking me questions about our systems. He would drop by my desk, unannounced, peer at my screen, ask things like, "Why do we not have complete documentation for all these integrations?" I explained the history. We grew fast. I was still the only person who understood the deep technical details. I had been gradually writing documentation, but it was a massive undertaking to document 5 years of work, while also maintaining everything. Douglas frowned. That is not acceptable in a professional environment. What if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? I tried not to take it personally. Maybe he had a point, but something about his tone bothered me. It was not constructive criticism. It felt like an accusation. Like I had been incompetent all along. The warning sign started small. In our weekly team meetings, Douglas began criticizing my work in front of everyone. One time, we had a 10-minute system downtime because an external API we relied on went down. It was completely out of our control. I noticed it immediately switched to a backup system and had everything running again within minutes. I explained this in the meeting, thinking it showed good incident response. Douglas stared at me and said, "This shows lack of proper monitoring. We need someone more proactive." I felt my face get hot. Someone more proactive. I had literally caught and fixed the problem in 10 minutes. But I kept my mouth shut. I did not want to seem defensive. The next week, Douglas announced he was hiring a junior engineer to support the team. The new guy's name was Kyle, 24 years old, fresh enthusiasm, eager to learn. Douglas told me, "I need you to train Kyle. He will be your backup." I actually felt relieved. Having someone to share the load sounded great. I spent hours with Kyle, walking him through our systems, explaining how everything connected. He took notes, asked good questions. I liked him. But then I started noticing Douglas pulling Kyle into private meetings. A lot of them. They would disappear into a conference room for an hour, and I was not invited. One afternoon I walked past the room to grab coffee, and the door was slightly open. I heard Douglas's voice clearly. "Once you understand the system, we can discuss your advancement opportunities here." My stomach dropped. Why would Douglas be discussing Kyle's advancement when the kid had been here 2 weeks? I went home that night and told Amy what I had heard. She was folding laundry on our bed and she paused. "Maybe you are overthinking it. Just keep doing your job well. That is all you can control." I wanted to believe her. I tried to push the uneasy feeling down, but it kept growing like a splinter, working its way deeper under my skin. 3 months into Douglas's reign, the situation escalated from uncomfortable to unbearable. It started with meetings I was not invited to anymore. Douglas began holding sessions about system architecture, our technical roadmap, future planning, all the stuff I should have been central to. But he only invited Kyle and a couple of other engineers. When I asked Douglas about it, he barely looked up from his laptop. "We are just brainstorming. I will update you later." He never did. Then I started getting emails from Douglas about new protocols and procedures I had never heard of. Changes to how we deployed code, how we handled incidents, how we prioritized bugs. I was the senior systems engineer, but I was learning about engineering decisions through mass emails like everyone else. The exclusion was deliberate and obvious. One day Marcus pulled me aside. Marcus was our DevOps engineer, a good guy I had worked with for 3 years. We grabbed coffee at the shop downstairs and he looked uncomfortable. "Dude, I think Douglas is trying to push you out." I stared at him. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. "What makes you say that?" Marcus stirred his coffee, not meeting my eyes. "He has been asking me questions about the systems, trying to figure out what you do, what you know." And he said something weird. He said, "You seem resistant to change." Resistant to change, I felt anger rising in my chest. Nobody has asked for my input on any changes. How can I be resistant to something I am not even part of? Marcus shrugged. "I am just telling you what I heard. Be careful, man." The following week, everything got worse. One of our major clients, a company that paid us over $500,000 a year, reported a bug in our billing system. Money was being calculated incorrectly. I immediately dropped everything to investigate. It took me a few hours, but I found the problem. Someone had changed a critical piece of code in the billing module without understanding the downstream effects. I checked the Git history. The change had been made by Kyle, but it was pushed during a time when Douglas had been supervising him directly. I fixed the bug in under 2 hours. I documented exactly what had gone wrong and why. I thought I had handled it professionally. Then Douglas called an emergency meeting. He gathered the entire engineering team, plus Mr. Harrison and a few other executives. My stomach was in knots as I sat down. Douglas stood at the front of the room, and his face was grave. "We had a serious incident this week with our billing system. Money was being miscalculated for one of our largest clients. This happened because of poor system design from the beginning. The current architecture is outdated and fragile." He was blaming me, in front of everyone. I could feel blood rushing to my face. I raised my hand. Actually, the bug occurred because of a code change that did not follow proper review procedures. The architecture itself is solid. I fixed the issue in 2 hours. Douglas cut me off. "That is just excuses. A good system should be foolproof. It should not break because one person makes a mistake. We need to rebuild this properly." I opened my mouth to respond, but Mr. Harrison was looking at me with this expression I had never seen before. Disappointment. He said nothing in my defense. The meeting ended, and I sat there feeling humiliated. 5 years of keeping this company running smoothly, and one incident that was not even my fault was being used to trash everything I had built. I could barely focus the rest of that week. The office felt hostile. Douglas barely spoke to me except to criticize something. Kyle looked uncomfortable whenever we interacted, like he knew something I did not. The atmosphere was suffocating. Then came the worst part. One morning I logged into our system and realized some of my admin access had been revoked. Permissions I had always had were suddenly gone. Kyle, meanwhile, had been granted elevated access to several critical systems. I immediately sent Douglas an email asking why my permissions had changed. No response. I called him. He answered with barely concealed irritation. "We are redistributing responsibilities. You will get details later. That was it. No explanation, no discussion. Just a unilateral decision to strip away my access to systems I had built. I hung up and sat at my desk shaking with anger. But I forced myself to stay calm. I could not afford to lose my temper. Not yet. That day, I left for lunch earlier than usual. I forgot my laptop at my desk and came back to grab it. As I walked past one of the small conference rooms, I heard voices. The door was slightly ajar. I recognized Douglas's voice immediately, then Kyle's. And a third voice I identified as Barbara, our HR director. I should have kept walking. But something made me stop. Douglas was speaking. Once we have full documentation of the systems, Joshua's role becomes redundant. We will not need someone at his salary level for maintenance. Kyle's voice uncertain. But he has been here 5 years. Will there not be issues letting him go Douglas again? Not if we do this right. I have been building a case documenting performance issues. HR is aware and on board. Barbara's voice clinical and detached. Just make sure everything is documented properly. We need a clear paper trail. I stood frozen in the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. They were planning to fire me. Douglas had been systematically setting me up, creating a narrative of incompetence, all while extracting every bit of knowledge I had. Kyle was being trained as my replacement. HR was complicit. This was not paranoia. This was a coordinated plan to throw me away after 5 years of loyalty. I quietly walked away before they could discover me listening. I went back to my desk, sat down, and stared at my screen without seeing it. The entire afternoon passed in a blur. I could not concentrate on anything. When 5 o'clock came, I left without saying goodbye to anyone. At home, I told Amy everything. She was furious. They are setting you up. You need to do something. Talk to a lawyer. Report this to someone. I sat on our couch feeling hollowed out. Report it to who HR is in on it. Mr. Harrison clearly trusts Douglas over me. I have no proof except what I overheard. Amy sat beside me, her hand on my arm. Then what are you going to do? Just wait for them to fire you. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the last 6 months in my mind. Every criticism, every exclusion, every small humiliation. And then I started thinking differently. What if I did not wait for them to fire me? What if I took control of the situation? By the time the sun came up Saturday morning, I had made my decision. I was going to quit. But not just quit. I was going to do it strategically at the exact moment it would cause Douglas the maximum amount of difficulty. If he wanted to play games, I could play too. But I would do it cleanly, professionally, by the book. No sabotage. No revenge in the petty sense. Just the natural consequences of undervaluing the person holding your entire infrastructure together. Amy and I spent the weekend planning. I pulled out my employment contract and read it carefully. 2 weeks' notice was required. That was standard. But nothing obligated me to stay longer. And nothing prevented me from leaving whenever I chose. As long as I gave those 2 weeks. I started thinking about timing. In 2 weeks it would be the end of the quarter. More importantly, TechVantage had a major launch scheduled. Vertex Corp, one of our biggest potential clients, was supposed to go live with our platform. This launch had been in the works for months. It was worth over $2 million in contract value. If it went well, it could lead to even bigger deals. If it failed, Vertex Corp would walk, and our reputation would take a serious hit. The launch required everything to work perfectly. Database migrations, API integrations, custom configurations I had personally built for their specific needs. Kyle had shadowed some of this work, but he did not understand the deep complexity. Douglas certainly did not. If I left right before the launch, they would be in serious trouble. The first week I went to work and acted completely normal. I did my job. I answered Kyle's questions when he asked, but I paid close attention to what he actually understood. I realized the training had been superficial. Kyle knew how to perform basic tasks, follow existing procedures, restart services when they crashed, but he had no idea how the underlying architecture worked. He did not know why things were built the way they were, what trade-offs had been made, where the fragile points existed. The database architecture alone was incredibly complex. We had custom integrations with 15 different third-party services, each with its own quirks and failure modes. There was some documentation, but it was basic. It covered the happy path, not the 100 weird edge cases I had learned through experience. I looked at what documentation existed. It was enough to keep things running when everything worked. But the moment something broke, in an unexpected way, you needed deep system knowledge. Kyle did not have that. Douglas definitely did not. And I was not going to give it to them now. When Kyle asked me about some of the more complex parts of the system, I gave him surface-level answers. You will learn that gradually. It takes time. He seemed satisfied. Douglas appeared pleased, probably thinking his plan was progressing smoothly. I checked my contract one more time. 2 weeks' notice. No violations. Everything legal and clean. I wrote my resignation letter. It was short and professional. Dear Douglas, I am writing to inform you of my resignation from TechVantage Solutions. My last day will be Friday the 10th. Thank you for the opportunity. Sincerely, Joshua. Monday of the second week arrived. Exactly 2 weeks before the Vertex Corp launch. I got to the office early before most people. I printed my resignation letter, put it in an envelope, and waited. At 9 o'clock, I walked to Douglas's office. He was on a phone call, saw me through the glass, and waved me in impatiently. He finished his call and looked at me with barely concealed annoyance. What do you need? I handed him the envelope. This is my 2 weeks' notice. My last day will be Friday the 10th. He stared at the envelope like it might explode. He opened it slowly, read the single page, and his face went through several colors. Confusion, then shock, then anger. What? Why is this about money? We can discuss compensation. I kept my voice calm and even. No, it is not about money. It is time for me to move on. Personal decision. Douglas stood up, trying to regain control. You cannot leave right now. We have the Vertex Corp launch. This is incredibly poor timing. I met his eyes. My contract requires 2 weeks' notice. I am giving exactly that. 2 weeks from today, his face was getting red. This is unprofessional. You are leaving us in a very difficult position. I expected better from you. I allowed myself a small smile. I am sure Kyle can handle it. You have been training him to take over my responsibilities, right? That is what the last few months have been about. Douglas went pale. He realized I knew. I knew exactly what he had been planning. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I stood up. I will spend the next 2 weeks doing as much knowledge transfer as possible. Excuse me. I walked out of his office, leaving him standing there. The news spread through the company within an hour. I became the subject of hushed conversations in hallways and conference rooms. Marcus came to my desk, eyes wide. Are you serious? You are actually leaving. What happened? I kept my answer vague. Just time to move on, man. Douglas called an emergency meeting with Kyle and the remaining senior engineers. I was not invited to that one either, but Marcus told me later it was panicked. Douglas was trying to figure out how to do a crash course in system knowledge. Kyle looked stressed and overwhelmed. Over the next 2 weeks, Douglas repeatedly asked me to document everything. I wrote documentation. Basic stuff. High-level overviews. Nothing that would actually help when things went wrong. When he complained it was not detailed enough, I said, 2 weeks is not enough time to document 5 years of institutional knowledge. I am doing my best. Small issues started appearing in the system. Nothing major, but enough to make everyone nervous. Kyle called me constantly with questions. I answered them, but I could tell he was panicking. He was starting to realize how much he did not know. Douglas tried multiple times to convince me to stay. He offered a raise. 15%, then 20%. I politely declined each time. I have already made my decision, but thank you. My last day was Friday. I packed up my desk that morning. Personal items, a few books, the coffee mug Amy had given me. I returned my laptop and access cards to IT. I said goodbye to the people I cared about. Marcus hugged me. Stay in touch. Good luck, man. You are doing the right thing. Douglas was cold and distant. I hope you know what you are doing. I smiled. I do. Good luck with the launch on Monday. Then I walked out of TechVantage Solutions for the last time. The feeling was strange. Relief mixed with anxiety. Freedom mixed with uncertainty. But also something else. Pride. I had stood up for myself. The Vertex Corp launch was scheduled for Monday. I was not there, obviously. But Marcus kept me updated via text. The messages started around 10 in the morning. Dude, it is chaos here. The system crashed during the demo with Vertex Corp. Then Kyle does not know how to fix it. He is freaking out. An hour later, Douglas is losing his mind. They had to postpone the demo. By the end of the day, Marcus sent. They called off the launch completely. Vertex Corp is furious. I think we might lose the contract. The following week things got worse for TechVantage. Multiple bugs started appearing in production. Things that I would have caught and fixed in minutes were taking days because nobody understood the systems well enough. Douglas hired external consultants to come in and help. That cost the company a fortune. $50,000 a month for a team of 3 consultants who had to learn everything from scratch. Then the resignation started. 3 other engineers quit within 2 weeks. They told Marcus they had lost confidence in leadership. They saw how Douglas had treated me, and they saw the chaos after I left. They did not want to be part of it anymore. The engineering department, which had been 12 people, was down to 6, and those 6 were drowning. A month after I left, Marcus called me. We met for coffee, at our old spot near the office. He looked exhausted. I need to tell you what is happening. It is bad, Joshua. Really bad. He told me Vertex Corp had officially pulled their contract. $2 million gone. The failed launch and subsequent system instability had destroyed their confidence in TechVantage. Word spread in the industry. Other clients started asking questions, expressing concerns. 2 smaller clients left for competitors. Mr. Harrison had called an emergency board meeting. Douglas was ripped apart in front of everyone. The board wanted to know how the company had become so dependent on one person, and why that person had felt compelled to leave right before a critical launch. Douglas apparently tried to blame me, saying I had been unprofessional and vindictive. But then the board asked why 3 other senior engineers had also quit immediately after. That was harder to explain away. The consulting firm TechVantage hired was competent, but expensive and slow. They needed months to fully understand the systems. The company was bleeding money. They had to do a round of layoffs. 10 people. 20% of the workforce. Gone. The office that used to feel vibrant and energetic was now tense and miserable. Marcus said people barely talked anymore. Everyone was afraid they would be next. 2 months after I left, Marcus sent me a text. Douglas is out. Harrison fired him today. I read that message sitting in my new office. I had accepted a position at a startup about 3 weeks after leaving TechVantage. The company was smaller, maybe 30 people, but growing fast. They needed a lead systems architect. The pay was 40% higher than what I had been making. More importantly, the culture was completely different. The CEO was a technical founder who understood and respected engineering. My opinions mattered. My expertise was valued. The work was challenging and exciting. I got to build things the right way from the start. When I read that Douglas had been fired, I did not feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Mostly I felt sad for my former coworkers. Marcus and the others who had stayed. They were good people caught in a bad situation. The whole thing was a waste. A waste of time, talent, relationships, and money. All because Douglas had been more concerned with control and ego than actually leading well. Amy and I were sitting on our couch that evening when I told her about Douglas. She looked at me carefully. How do you feel? I thought about it. Honestly relieved that I am not there anymore, but not happy about what happened. I did not want the company to fall apart. I just wanted to be respected. She squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. You protected yourself. What happened after is not your fault. That is on them. Over the following months, I settled into my new role. The work was demanding but fulfilling. I was building systems again, solving interesting problems, collaborating with smart people who appreciated what I brought to the table. I started sleeping better. The constant stress and anxiety I had carried for months at TechVantage faded away. I realized how much that environment had been damaging my mental health. I had been so focused on surviving day to day that I had not noticed how miserable I had become. One afternoon, about 4 months after I left TechVantage, I got a LinkedIn message. It was from Mr. Harrison. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won. I opened it. The message was long and apologetic. He said he realized now that he had made a terrible mistake bringing in Douglas without properly understanding the dynamics of the team. He said he should have listened when I tried to raise concerns. He said he understood now how critical my role had been and how badly he had failed to protect me. Then he asked if I would consider coming back. He offered a significant raise, a better title equity in the company. He said they had stabilized somewhat but were still struggling, and he believed I was the only person who could truly fix things. I read the message twice. Then I closed my laptop. I talked to Amy about it that night. What do you think I should do? She did not hesitate. Do you want to go back? I thought about it honestly. Did I miss the people? Some of them, yes. Marcus especially. Did I miss the work? Not really. I was doing better work now. Did I miss the company? No. The trust was broken. Even with Douglas gone, the fact that Mr. Harrison had allowed it to happen in the first place told me something important about leadership there. No, I said finally. I do not want to go back. The next morning I replied to Mr. Harrison. I thanked him for reaching out and for the apology. I told him I appreciated the offer but was happy where I was. I wished him luck rebuilding the team and the company. I kept it polite and professional. Then I closed that chapter of my life completely. Looking back now, I learned something crucial. You teach people how to treat you. For too long, I had accepted being undervalued because I thought loyalty meant staying no matter what. But loyalty is not a one-way street. A company has to be loyal to its people too. Respect is not optional. It is fundamental. When Douglas started treating me as disposable, I should have recognized it immediately for what it was. A signal that my time there was over. I also learned that walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the strongest thing you can do. I could have stayed and fought. I could have tried to go over Douglas's head, escalate to Harrison, make a formal complaint. But I knew how those things usually go. The person complaining becomes the problem. I would have been labeled as difficult, not a team player. By resigning on my own terms at the moment of my choosing, I maintained my dignity and my power. I was not a victim. I was someone making a clear-headed decision about my own worth. The department fell apart not because I sabotaged anything. I did not delete files or corrupt data or anything malicious. It fell apart because they had built a house of cards and then removed the foundation. They had spent months planning to get rid of me without understanding what I actually did. That was their failure, not mine. Douglas learned an expensive lesson about the difference between management and leadership. Management is about control. Leadership is about bringing out the best in people. He tried to control, and he lost everything. As for me, I am in a better place now. Professionally and personally. I work somewhere I am valued. I am building something I am proud of. And I sleep well at night knowing I stood up for myself when it mattered most. So if you have made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from a job that did not value you? How did you know it was time? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who is feeling undervalued right now and needs permission to choose themselves. Thank you for listening. I hope you never have to learn this lesson the way I did. But if you do, I hope you have the courage to walk away. Your worth is not determined by how one person treats you. And when you know your value, you will never settle for less. The department fell not because of my revenge, but because they forgot what held it together in the first place. Respect. Take care of yourselves out there.